I would like to invite Mr. Muhtar Kent. Our moderator will be in this session, Chairman of Coca-Cola Company. And I would like to invite His Excellency Mr. Jean-Claude Juncker, President of European Commission, Guy Ryder, Director General ILO, Ms. Christine Lagarde, Managing Director IMF, Angel Gurria, Secretary General OECD, Roberto Azevedo, Director General World Trade Organization, and Mark Carney, Mr. Mark Carney, Chair, Financial Stability Board. And Mr. Muhtar Kent is our moderator in this G20 leaders session. Ladies and gentlemen, now please take your seats and we will listen opening remarks. Ladies and gentlemen, please take your seats. Lütfen yerlerimizi alalım. Sayın Kanada Başbakanı Justin Trudeau bir konuşma yapacak. Floor is yours, Prime Minister.
Thank you, everyone. Merci tout le monde. J'aimerais d'abord, évidemment, commencer par une réflexion. Nous sommes tous profondément attristés par les événements à Paris. Je veux assurer tous nos cousins français que le Canada sera là pour vous pendant ces temps difficiles et dans les semaines et mois à venir. But despite the circumstances, it is a pleasure to be here, exchanging with labor and business leaders. It's extremely important that we, political leaders, business leaders, labor leaders, youth leaders, work together to address in creative and innovative ways the challenges facing our world today. The fact is we're seeing a stalling of global growth. We're seeing challenges around the world in trade and in conflict. And it's going to require all of us, G20 and beyond, to pull together and start once again working to create opportunity and growth for all. The investments and inclusive growth that is at the heart of the discussions here at the G20 are, I think, the right path. Canadians sent me a strong message over the course of our election campaign that they felt it was important that we be investing in our communities, that we be investing in infrastructure, that we be ensuring that everyone has a real and fair chance to succeed. And that's the kind of approach that inclusive growth, not just in Canada but around the world, we need to invest in and we need to focus on. Making sure that we are addressing the great challenges of our time, whether it's the stalled middle-class incomes, whether it's the lack of opportunity for those working hard to join the middle class, the idea of hope for relevance, for success, is a shared dream of all human beings. And our capacity as communities, as governments, as business leaders, as labor leaders, to focus on the meaningful long-term solutions to empowering individuals and creating prosperity is truly the only way to move forward. We need to make sure we are investing in the long term. It is tempting to look at quarterly returns and short-term outcomes and think that if everyone just takes care of the short term, the long term will take care of itself. But that is increasingly not true. The impacts of our actions on the other side of the globe, the impacts of our actions on generations to come can no longer be ignored. And indeed, what we are beginning to understand is creating opportunity for all to succeed, behaving in a fair and responsible way is not simply a moral decision. It is very much an economic decision as well. When people in challenging economic circumstances have more money in their pockets to spend, to grow, to invest in the economy does better. And right now, as we look at the challenges the globe is facing with growth, we need to understand that the topics discussed here at the G20 of investment inclusively is going to be at the center of the solutions we have bringing forward. Whether it's on issues of aiding refugees and allowing them opportunities to contribute, not just to survive, but to contribute to host communities in the coming years, to create opportunities for their kids to grow up with a real chance to succeed wherever they are in the world, needs to be a shared imperative across party and nation lines. We also recognize that climate change is a very real challenge, and how we prepare for the increasing pressures on our ecosystems and our resources and our climate will be something that will be judged on in coming decades and generations. We have an opportunity now to come together as G20 leaders, come together as leaders of all different backgrounds and types from around the world, and truly engage in the fact that confident, optimistic countries should always be willing to invest concretely in their own future. But so should an optimistic and confident world be ready to invest in its future and to tackle the great shared problems we have. And I welcome the discussions here at the G20 and many more to come in the weeks and years to come as the global community leans in on facing and surpassing the great challenges we all share. Merci beaucoup tout le monde. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Prime Minister. Thank you. Mr. Prime Minister, we thank you for your remarks and also wish you on behalf of the B20 lots of continued success. And thank you for agreeing to take 2 questions from the floor. And to ask the first question, I'd like to call on Mr. Ali Koch, who is the head of the Labor and Employment Task Force and who's done a lot of work in this area, a lot of good work. And Ali, the floor is yours if you can ask Prime Minister Trudeau the first question. Can we have a microphone, please? Microphone?
I think it's on.
Is it on?
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. I wish I didn't have the first question, but welcome to Turkey. Congratulations on your success. I wish you good fortune.
Can you hold the microphone closer?
Yes, I will. As suggested, we will ask a question on the employment issue. One of the main issues we were concentrating on was the youth unemployment. And today, as you know, it's at 13.1%, which is double the amount of adult unemployment or general unemployment. But even worse or more alarming is the fact that youth that are not in education, employment or training, NEET, is at 18.2%. It's a group that's very vulnerable and subject to being marginalized. In addition to this, a very important topic, as we see lately, is the refugee crisis. Today, there are about 60 million people who have left their homes for various reasons, economical, war, persecution, etc., etc. But half of these people are also children or youth. So this is bound to deepen the youth unemployment crisis. And I think your country has one of the most interesting immigration policies that I know of. So putting all these together, and we believe that if this is not addressed very soon, it's going to have some social implications, social disruption. I'd like to know what you think about the youth unemployment, refugee crisis, and the general movement of people, because as you know, globalization has allowed the movement of capital, services, goods, information flows freely with all the technological advancements, but the human factor is not at the core of this globalization. In fact, it's much harder for humans to move among countries and economies. And there's 2 kinds of migration. One is by choice, one is by force. Refugee crisis by force. Would like to know what you think about these issues. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your questions. Youth issues are a matter of significant import to me. Some of you may know I started my career as a school teacher, and empowering young people to become more successful is something that has always guided me, which is why for the first time the Prime Minister of Canada is also the Minister for Youth of Canada. And this isn't a sentimental choice. This is something that recognizes the fact that the success of our young people will determine the success not just of our economies, but indeed of our planet. And I didn't want to see the Ministry for Youth be a separate entity unto itself, because obviously youth issues, like so many issues, cross from business to health to employment to international relations. And it is important to me that as a government we pay more attention to young people. One of the things that as politicians we encounter, because universally young people tend to participate less in developed economies in political processes, that politics don't do a good job of reaching out to young people, so young people don't feel particularly compelled to participate, and you get a vicious cycle where the long-term reflections and the challenges to the status quo, the disruptive powers of young people, are not necessarily challenged both for good or for the kinds of opportunities that we need to reflect upon. Canada is not unlike many other countries in that indeed we have challenges with youth unemployment, which is why we've chosen to invest more than $300 million in the coming years in directly creating more than 40,000 new youth job opportunities. We've invested in accelerating and increasing cooperation placements for young people in sciences and mathematics and businesses to allow them to actually engage in work experience in a concrete and real way. And we're actually lowering payroll costs for employers who hire young people. Now, employers often are wary about hiring young people, looking at a number of older people who are perhaps looking for work as well in this new economy, but come with baggage and an experience that can be very appealing to employers. But at the same time, we need to understand that investing in the dynamism of youth and shaping young people's inputs so that they can contribute is the best guarantor for success in the long term. Investing in youth issues is always sound investment for any country, and the more we do of caring for our young people is the more we do for caring for a sustainable future for our economy and our countries. On the Syrian refugee crisis and the refugee crisis writ large, I'm pleased to say that Canada has tremendous examples of having integrated people fleeing for their lives from very difficult situations to become not only citizens but active contributors to Canada's success. Whether it was welcoming the Ugandan Ismaili refugees from East Africa in the early 70s, or welcoming the boat people from Indochina in the early 80s, or many other waves of immigration, Canada has always known that drawing people in and giving them paths to integrate and to succeed is truly a way to create economic growth and a pluralistic, diverse society. Canada figured out a long time ago that differences should be a source of strength, not a source of weakness. And the more we can do to bring in diverse perspectives, diverse points of view, and indeed to define a country not based on national identity or ethnicity or language or background, but on values shared by all people in our country, values of openness, respect, compassion, a willingness to work hard, a desire to be there for each other, is truly how countries in this globalized world where migrations and immigration is going to be the norm rather than the exception. This is a lesson we all need to learn, how to listen to people of different perspectives and backgrounds, how to empower them and encourage them to contribute to build the kind of security and stability for themselves, their family, and by extension their entire community, which is why Canada is pleased to be stepping up. We will be accepting 25,000 Syrian refugees between now and January 1st, and investing in ensuring that we will be empowering and integrating them into success and the paths for success that people around the world are hoping to see. Thank you very much for your questions.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Prime Minister. Thank you. The next and last question will come from Marcus Wallenberg from Sweden, the chairman of SEB. If we can get a microphone over to the second row to Mr. Wallenberg. Marcus, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Mukhtar. Prime Minister, thank you very much for letting me have the chance. I represent business and the ICC at this conference. I have had the pleasure to participate in a number of these meetings. From my perspective as a business person, it seems to me that we are living in a time when business is rather hesitant about making further investments. And there are a number of reasons for that, like overcapacity, some uncertainty, etc., etc. Monetary policy, where central bankers over the past few years have done tremendous work in terms of getting enough liquidity into the system, regulating the system and so on, has been very, very important. But I think we, at this point in time, have a fantastic opportunity. There is a tremendous need for infrastructure in the world. There is a tremendous need to answer the climate question. So here we have the chance to create jobs, get investments going, and address the climate issue going forward. So my suggestion for your consideration would be two. First of all, I think that we would need an investment agreement at the level of the G20 between the different G20 countries on what will be the rules of engagement for infrastructure investment cross-border on an international scale. Number two, I think that when we entered into the financial crisis, we also entered into a period of more regulation into the financial sector. At this time, and during this period, we have discussed how to calibrate all those regulations going forward. My suggestion to you would be to see how we can calibrate the regulation of the financial system such that we can support the infrastructure and the green infrastructure needed going forward. So my question to you, Prime Minister, is you have a big group of business people here in front of you. I think we all agree with the President of Turkey when he says that we have to come from the point of view just having meetings and discussing issues to real action. How can business help in getting this action really going? Thank you.
Thank you very much for your question. And how business can help is by doing what business does well and doing more of it, which is looking for investment opportunities, looking to create growth, looking to hire more people, looking to actually create the kinds of return on investments that are good not just for stakeholders and shareholders, but for everyone. I think the understanding that I've seen in the business community that the business community is also part of the community of citizens around this world that we're building up means that there is a desire and a willingness to be part of the solution and not just part of the problem. And our capacity to do that means to invest in infrastructure, to create more resilient infrastructure, not just for the sake of creating jobs in the short term, but infrastructure that's going to lead to greater business opportunities, greater innovation, greater growth, whether it's in transport infrastructure like public transit or better airports and ports and bridges, whether it's in innovative research centers to allow for the kinds of cutting-edge science and solutions to be brought forward, whether it's investing in resilient infrastructure that's going to be able to resist and go beyond the impacts of climate change. We have a tremendous need to adapt and to mitigate to the impacts of climate change, and governments cannot do it alone. Governments need to be part of setting the framework, but looking to strong business partners to create always an eye to continuing the growth that we need in our economy is going to be at the center of that. So I'm looking forward to calling on the business community, both at home and internationally, to look at investments in the kind of resilient, growth-creating infrastructure that we're going to need to think of the long term. And if there was one specific ask I had of the business community, that is to be confident in our collective future as a planet, and to start thinking long term in your investments. Don't get overly distracted by the short-term profits. They are, of course, important to feed towards the long-term profits that we need to create of stability. So encouraging the business community and the political community to not be wary of thinking about a longer than the next election timeline is going to be part of the thinking that will get us out of the very real challenges we're facing. But in general, we're just going to need to be creative, to draw on all voices, understand that diversity is a source of strength, and be confident about investing in our individual and collective futures. Merci beaucoup tout le monde. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Prime Minister. Thank you for your words. Thank you for participating. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Siz verin.